The sun hung low over Fresno that afternoon, painting the modest streets in a soft amber glow. Inside a small one-story home on Belmont Avenue, Hannah Alvarez was busy in her tiny kitchen, the air rich with the scent of chicken mole simmering on the stove. She had been up since dawn, grinding spices, tasting the sauce, polishing the old plates she only used on special occasions. It was Mother's Day, and her son David was coming to visit. He had promised to arrive around 3, just like he used to when his father was alive. Hannah had counted the minutes ever since. She moved slowly but with purpose, her hands trembling slightly as she set the table. In the center, she placed a small vase filled with fresh gardenias from her backyard. Their sweet fragrance mixed with the aroma of the mole, filling the room with warmth and nostalgia. Her apron was faded, her hair streaked with silver, but her eyes were bright. This visit meant everything to her. David hadn't been around much these past few years, not since he married Monica. Life had gotten busier, he said. Work, travel, new responsibilities. Hannah understood, or at least she tried to. She never wanted to be a burden. Yet every time she looked at the empty chair where he used to sit for Sunday dinners, her heart ached in silence. At exactly 3 o'clock, the doorbell rang. The sound startled her. It was sharp, almost formal. She wiped her hands on her apron and hurried to the door. When she opened it, David stood there, tall, handsome, dressed in a tailored gray suit that probably cost more than she made in 3 months back when she still worked at the diner. His cologne smelled faintly of cedar and something expensive she couldn't name. "Mom," he said, smiling, his voice warm and steady. For a moment, Hannah saw the little boy he used to be, the one who brought her flowers from the schoolyard and said she was the best cook in the world. She opened her arms, and he stepped into them, holding her tight. "Happy Mother's Day," he murmured. "Thank you, mi hijo," she whispered, tears threatening to spill. Then, behind him, Monica appeared. The young woman was beautiful, perfectly styled as always. Long beige dress, flawless makeup, manicured nails glinting in the light. She carried a bouquet of lilies and an expensive gift bag, her smile polite but detached. "Happy Mother's Day, Hannah," she said smoothly, leaning in to offer a brief hug that felt more like an obligation than affection. "Thank you, dear. Come in, come in. The food is ready." They sat in the small dining room. The old wooden furniture creaked under their movement. David complimented the meal, praising the familiar taste of home. Monica nodded absently, scrolling through her phone between bites. Hannah tried not to notice. She was simply grateful to have them there, even if the silence between them felt heavy. After dessert, flan she had made from scratch, Hannah poured coffee and finally allowed herself to relax. Maybe, she thought, this day would end peacefully after all. But then David set his cup down and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Mom," he began carefully, "are you happy with the $3,000 I've been sending you every month?" For a heartbeat, everything went still. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the clock, even the sound of cars outside, everything faded. "The 3,000 what?" she asked quietly. "The money," he said, puzzled. "The $3,000 I've been sending you each month. You've been getting it, right?" Her face drained of color. "David, I haven't received anything." Monica's phone screen went dark. She looked up, smiling faintly but said nothing. The seconds stretched, taut and suffocating. David frowned, confusion clouding his eyes. Hannah felt the room closing in, the scent of food turning heavy, the gardenias wilting in the vase. That single question, meant to express concern, had cracked open something deep and irreversible. She hadn't received a cent, and in that instant, as her son's smile faded and his wife's silence thickened the air, Hannah knew whatever peace still existed in her family was about to disappear forever. David's brow furrowed, his expression shifting from surprise to confusion. "Mom, that can't be right," he said. Monica has been bringing you the checks every month. Haven't you, honey? He turned to his wife, searching her face for reassurance. Monica looked up slowly, her voice smooth and controlled. Of course I have, she said, letting out a faint, nervous laugh. Maybe she just forgot. It happens, David. She's been under a lot of stress lately, right? Her tone was gentle but condescending, like she was explaining something obvious to a child. Hannah's hands trembled slightly as she wiped the table with a cloth that didn't need cleaning. Forgotten, she repeated, disbelief hardening her voice. I might be old, but I'm not confused. I would remember $3,000. David sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. He hated confrontation, he always had. Maybe there's been some kind of mix-up with the bank. Monica, you can show her the transfers later, okay? Monica smiled thinly. Of course. But Hannah wasn't convinced. There was a tone, quiet, polished, practiced, that sent a chill through her. The same tone she'd heard when Monica dismissed her opinion at the wedding, or when she called her sweet instead of smart. A knock sounded at the door. Sharp, familiar. Hannah rose instinctively. That must be Sister Margaret, she said, heading toward the entrance. David looked up. Sister who? Before Monica could respond, the door opened to reveal a stout woman in a simple gray habit. Her face flushed from the heat. She carried 2 heavy grocery bags that she set down by the doorway. Hannah, dear, here's your monthly box from St. Joseph, she said kindly. We added extra rice this time. Hannah's eyes widened. She hadn't expected her that afternoon. Oh, sister, thank you. You shouldn't have troubled yourself today. Nonsense, the nun said, smiling. You know, we always take care of our regulars. The words hung in the air like smoke. David froze. Regulars. Sister Margaret blinked, looking from him to Monica, then back to Hannah. Yes, she's been part of our food assistance program for almost a year now. Why? Monica's face drained of color, her practiced poise slipping for the first time. She forced a laugh, stepping forward quickly. Oh, it's just temporary. You know how stubborn she is about accepting help. I told her she didn't need to. But, Sister Margaret, Hannah interrupted, her voice steady now. Please, tell my son how often you bring food here. Every month, the nun said simply. Since last summer. She smiled again, but it faltered as she sensed the tension in the room. Is everything all right? David's mouth opened, but no words came out. He turned toward his mother, then toward Monica. You've been getting help from the church. Yes, Hannah said, her tone laced with quiet humiliation. Because I have no money, David. Because I thought you'd forgotten me. He stood there, silent, the realization dawning like a slow burn. Monica shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting toward the door. David, this isn't what it looks like, she started, but her voice wavered. He cut her off, his voice low but sharp. You said you delivered the money yourself. I did, she whispered, just not directly. The air grew thick, heavy with disbelief. Sister Margaret murmured an awkward goodbye and slipped out, leaving the door slightly ajar. The sunlight, spilling into the room, seemed harsher now, cutting across the table like a blade. Hannah stood beside her son, small but unflinching. You see, David, she said softly, truth has a way of finding its way in, just like light through an open door. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time, doubt clouded the certainty in his eyes. The lifetime of trust between mother and son had been cracked. Not shattered yet, but broken enough that both of them could feel the fracture spreading quietly through the room. David sat down heavily at the table, his jaw tight, his expression caught between confusion and disbelief. He unlocked his phone and began scrolling through his banking app. The sound of his fingers tapping the screen filled the silence between them, cold and mechanical. Then he turned the phone toward his mother. Look, he said flatly. 8 transfers. Every month. $3,000. To your name. Hannah leaned closer, her glasses slipping down her nose. She squinted at the screen. The account number displayed was unfamiliar, not the one she'd used for decades. That's not mine, she said quietly. My account ends in 4827. That one's different. David frowned, scrolling faster. But it says R. Alvarez, he muttered. That's you. How could it not be yours? Monica stood motionless by the window, arms crossed, eyes darting from the screen to the floor. Maybe the bank made a typo, she said with a shaky laugh. You know how systems mess up sometimes. David's tone sharpened. A typo? 8 months in a row. Hannah clasped her hands together, her knuckles white. David, I have one account. The last time I checked, I had $183. I can show you my statement. Something in her voice, tired but steady, made David pause. He opened another app and pressed a button. Let's settle this, he said. We'll call the bank right now. Monica's head jerked up. David, that's not necessary, but he was already on speaker. Hi, this is David Alvarez. I've been transferring money to what I believed was my mother's account, but I need to confirm the recipient details. A polite female voice on the other end replied, Of course, sir. Can you verify the last 4 digits of the account number? David read them aloud. A pause. Then the woman's voice returned, firm and factual. Sir, the account number you provided belongs to a Mrs. Monica Delgado Alvarez. Silence. The sound of the refrigerator humming was suddenly deafening. Hannah stared at her daughter-in-law, her breath caught in her throat. David's face drained of color, disbelief turning to anger in a heartbeat. What? The woman on the phone continued, unaware of the storm she'd just unleashed. Is there anything else I can help you with, Mr. Alvarez? David's voice was clipped. No, that's all. He hung up. For a long, terrible moment, no one spoke. Finally, Monica forced a laugh, brittle and hollow. Okay, fine, she said, her voice trembling, but still trying to sound composed. I can explain. David slammed his palm on the table. Explain what? That you've been stealing from my mother. I wasn't stealing, she said quickly, words tumbling out in panic. I was saving it for her. For a surprise. I wanted to open a new account under her name and add to it. For her birthday. You know, make it something special. Hannah looked at her then, really looked. There was no fear in her eyes, just deep, quiet disappointment. You think I don't know what a lie sounds like, Monica, she said softly. I raised a son who used to lie about finishing his homework. I've heard every tone. Monica's mask cracked. I was going to tell you, she shouted. You're twisting this. David rose slowly from his chair. Where's the money? Monica. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He stepped closer. Where is the money? She looked toward her purse, then away. It's safe, she muttered. Hannah's stomach turned. Safe. Such an easy word, spoken with the same emptiness she'd used when thanking her earlier for lunch. David's voice was cold now, controlled in the way that always preceded an explosion. We're going to the house, he said. Now, I want to see it. Monica opened her mouth to protest, but the look on his face stopped her. Hannah followed them to the door, her heart pounding, her fingers tightening around the edge of the table. She didn't feel anger yet, just the slow, aching weight of betrayal settling in her chest. As the door closed behind them, she whispered to the empty room. A surprise, she said. Then she looked down at her trembling hands. Funny how surprises always hurt the ones who never asked for them. The drive from Hannah's modest neighborhood to Woodward Park took less than 15 minutes, but the silence in the car made it feel like an hour. David's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Monica sat in the passenger seat, motionless, her face half turned toward the window, as if she could avoid the storm waiting to break. When they reached their gated home, everything looked immaculate. The manicured hedges, the glossy white garage doors, the kind of house people slowed down to admire. But for Hannah, the sight was a punch to the chest. She thought of her cracked kitchen tiles, her old stove that sparked every time she lit it, and the way she sometimes skipped dinner to make her groceries last. Inside, the air was cool and sterile. A faint scent of vanilla candles hung in the air. "Where is it?" David asked, voice low and deliberate. Monica hesitated, then walked down the hallway toward their bedroom. Hannah followed, slowly, her heart pounding. She had never been inside her son's master suite before. It looked like something from a magazine, sleek, expensive, lifeless. Monica stopped at the closet, reached for a hidden panel on the wall, and pressed her thumb against a small metal pad. A quiet beep echoed. The panel slid open, revealing a built-in safe. She crouched, typed in a code, and the lock clicked. From inside, she pulled out a white envelope and placed it on the dresser. "That's all that's left," she said, not meeting David's eyes. He tore the flap open. Inside were stacks of $100 bills, thick but not nearly enough. He counted quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5,000, he said. His tone was hollow, dangerous. "Where's the rest?" "I told you. I was saving $24,000, Monica!" he shouted, slamming the envelope onto the dresser, so hard the bills scattered across the marble surface. "My mother has been living on church food donations while you've been saving her money? Do you even hear how that sounds?" Her composure cracked. "I didn't spend it all," she said, her voice trembling. "Some of it went toward bills, the house, things we needed." "Things we needed?" he snapped. "You mean the designer bag? The new SUV? The spa membership?" Monica's face reddened, her chin lifting in defiance. "I handle everything in this household, David. The finances, the image, the stress. You have no idea what it's like keeping up with the life you insist on having. I did what I had to do." Hannah stood near the doorway, watching quietly. Her fingers brushed against the edge of the dresser, grounding herself as the words ricocheted around the room. David pointed toward her. "She's my mother. She's been living like she's one bad day away from losing everything. And you," he stopped, his voice cracking, "you let me believe I was taking care of her." For a moment, Monica looked cornered, small. Then something shifted. Her shoulders straightened, and her tone turned icy. "Your mother won't be here forever," she said. "But I will." The room fell silent. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to vanish. David's expression froze, disbelief written across his face. Hannah felt the words like a physical blow, sharp and final. In that instant, she understood. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, pride, and cruelty wrapped in charm. David turned away, his breathing unsteady. Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but her voice was calm when she finally spoke. "You may have everything, Monica," she said softly, "but not the right to look down on the hands that built it." The silence that followed was absolute. For David, it was the moment something inside him broke, the illusion of love, of partnership, of safety. And for Hannah, standing in her son's beautiful, hollow house, it was the moment she knew. The family she had once held together was splintering, piece by piece, before her eyes. A week passed in heavy silence, the kind of silence that seeps into walls, lingers in corners, and grows heavier each day it's left unbroken. Hannah didn't call, and neither did David. She spent her mornings watering the gardenias, her afternoons sitting by the window watching neighbors walk their dogs, and her nights replaying that scene in the bedroom. The envelope, the money, Monica's words echoing in her head. "Your mother won't be here forever, but I will." On the 8th day, she heard the crunch of tires on her driveway. She peeked through the curtain and saw David's silver SUV. Her heart fluttered, a mix of hope and dread. When he entered, he looked different, his suit still immaculate, but his expression restrained, his voice oddly formal. "Hi, Mom." He kissed her cheek lightly, as though greeting a distant relative. "I didn't think you'd come," she said quietly, setting down the teapot. "I needed some time," he answered, avoiding her eyes. He sat down at the kitchen table, the same spot where the confrontation had begun. "I talked to Monica," he said finally. "She admits she made a mistake. She thought keeping the money in a separate account would make it easier to manage. It was a misunderstanding." The word hit Hannah like a slap. "A misunderstanding?" she repeated. "David, I was eating kin soup while she was buying handbags." He flinched slightly, but his tone remained steady. "She shouldn't have done it, but she's been under pressure. Work, the house, everything. Maybe she just made a poor choice." Hannah's voice broke. "And lying about it for months? That's not a choice, that's cruelty." He looked down at his hands, guilt flickering across his face, but he didn't answer. The silence stretched until Hannah realized this conversation wasn't about truth. It was about him trying to keep his world intact. He wasn't here to fix what was broken. He was here to make it bearable. When he left, she stood in the doorway and watched the SUV roll away. The smell of gasoline lingered long after the car disappeared. Days turned into weeks. Neighbors who once waved now crossed the street when they saw her. One afternoon, Mrs. Rodriguez from across the way knocked on Hannah's door with a hesitant smile. "I just wanted to check in," she said gently. "Monica mentioned you've been forgetful lately, misplacing things. She said you might need help managing your bills." Hannah froze. She said, "What?" "Oh, I'm sure she meant well," Mrs. Rodriguez added quickly. "You know how she worries." By evening, 2 more neighbors had stopped by, one offering to drive her to church, another suggesting she join a senior support group. Each spoke with the same syrupy tone, half pity, half suspicion. The realization came like a cold wind. Monica was spreading rumors. Within a week, whispers followed Hannah wherever she went. At the market, people exchanged glances when she counted her change twice. At church, a woman patted her shoulder and said softly, "Don't worry, dear. We all forget things sometimes." Forget. That was the word Monica had chosen. Hannah tried to hold her head high, but humiliation crept in like a stain that couldn't be washed out. She stopped going out in the afternoons. The gardenias wilted from neglect. Even Sister Margaret's visits became shorter, her tone cautious, as if she too wondered whether the rumors were true. One evening, Hannah sat at her kitchen table, the room dim except for the flicker of a single lamp. On the counter lay unopened mail and a half-eaten sandwich. She looked at the empty chair across from her, the one David used to fill when they'd share coffee and talk about everything and nothing. Now there was only silence, not the comforting silence of peace, but the sharp, echoing kind that comes when the world starts to forget you exist. And as that silence settled deeper around her, Hannah realized Monica hadn't just taken her money. She was taking her reputation, her dignity, and little by little the truth itself. 3 days later, Monica showed up at Hannah's front door holding a sleek leather purse and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hannah," she began sweetly, "I've been thinking about what happened. We both said things we didn't mean. Let's make peace, okay?" Hannah stood framed in the doorway, apron dusted with flour, her expression guarded. "Peace doesn't require lies," she said quietly. Monica ignored the jab, stepping inside as if she owned the place. "Here," she said, pulling a few crisp bills from her purse and placing them on the table. $200, just to start, until we figure out the rest." Hannah stared at the money, not out of greed, but disbelief. $200, presented like a gift, when Monica had stolen thousands. The younger woman folded her arms and tilted her head, as though waiting for gratitude. "I don't need your charity," Hannah said. Monica's lips curved into a patient smile. "Hannah, I'm trying to help you. There's no need to get defensive." "I'm not defensive. I'm insulted." That wiped the softness from Monica's face. Her tone cooled. Her words sharp as glass. "You see things your way, I see them mine. Different perspectives, that's all. Let's leave the past in the past." She slipped the money back into her purse and left without another word. The faint scent of her perfume lingered in the air. Something expensive, cloying, and cold. 2 days later, Monica returned. But this time she wasn't alone. A tall woman in a navy blazer followed her into the living room, carrying a leather briefcase and a professional smile. "Hannah, this is Dr. Patricia Torres," Monica announced. "She's a neurologist I met through a friend. We've all been worried about you, and I thought a quick checkup might ease everyone's minds." Hannah frowned. "A checkup? Here." Dr. Torres spoke in a soothing tone. "Just a few simple questions, Mrs. Alvarez. Nothing to worry about." She pulled out a notepad. "Can you tell me what day it is today?" Hannah hesitated, wary. "It's Wednesday, the 23rd. "And your age?" 63. The doctor nodded, jotting something down. Then she asked about medications, about memory lapses, about whether Hannah ever felt confused or unsafe. Halfway through, Hannah's patience snapped. "This is ridiculous," she said, her voice trembling. "There's nothing wrong with me. The only one confused here is your friend." Dr. Torres looked up, her expression suddenly cool. She scribbled on her clipboard. "Noted. Agitated and paranoid response to cognitive assessment." Hannah's stomach dropped. "That's not what I said." Monica sighed dramatically. "Please, Hannah, we're just trying to make sure you're okay. Everyone's noticed you've been different lately." The doctor closed her notebook and turned to Monica. "I'll file my preliminary notes. It may be worth considering guardianship if symptoms persist." The word hit like a thunderclap. Guardianship, the legal process of declaring someone unfit to manage their own affairs. As they left, Monica squeezed Hannah's shoulder with faux sympathy. "You see, it's for your own good." When the door closed, Hannah stood in the dim light of her living room, the quiet pressing in around her. Outside, the wind rattled the garden gate, a hollow sound against the growing storm inside her chest. She walked slowly through the house that night, touching the framed photos on the wall. Her wedding day, David as a boy, the life she had built with care. They wanted to take it from her. Her freedom, her name, her dignity, one signature at a time. And for the first time in weeks, her fear hardened into something sharper. Resolve. If they wanted to fight, they were about to find out that Hannah Alvarez, the woman they thought was fading, still had fire left in her veins. The following afternoon, Hannah's phone rang just as she was finishing her tea. The number was unfamiliar, but the voice on the other end was polite and steady. "Mrs. Alvarez? My name is Victor Estrada. I'm an accountant at Alvarez Construction. I need to speak with you, privately, about something important." Hannah stiffened, unsure. "About my son's business?" "Yes," he said carefully, "and about Mrs. Delgado Alvarez. I believe you've been affected by some of her actions. I'd prefer to explain in person, if that's all right." Something in his tone, firm, respectful, without pity, made her agree. "All right," she said. "Come by this afternoon." When the knock came a few hours later, Hannah opened the door to find a man in his 40s, neatly dressed, holding a thick brown folder under one arm. His expression was serious, but his eyes carried a quiet kindness that eased her tension. "Thank you for seeing me," he said as she invited him in. He glanced around the small living room. Humble but spotless, the shelves lined with framed photos and religious figurines. He seemed to understand instantly the kind of woman she was. They sat at the table, the same spot where David had once accused her of forgetting things. Victor placed the folder down gently. "I've been reviewing financial irregularities at your son's company," he began. "It started with small inconsistencies, but the deeper I looked, the more I found. And I think you deserve to know the truth." He opened the folder, revealing pages of bank statements, receipts, and printed email records. "This first section," he said, tapping a document, "shows transfers made from your son's personal account to one labeled under your name, but actually registered to Monica Delgado Alvarez." Hannah nodded slowly. "That's the money David said he'd been sending me." "Yes," Victor confirmed, "but that's not all." He turned another page, his tone tightening. "I found evidence that she's been diverting company funds, about $150,000 so far. She set up a secondary business account under a shell company. She's been using it to pay the lease on an apartment in downtown Fresno." Hannah frowned. "An apartment?" Victor hesitated. "Yes. The lease isn't in her name. It's under a man named Evan Lewis. He's a client your son's company worked with last year. I'm sorry to tell you this, but the records, credit card bills, hotel receipts, even photos, suggest she's been in a relationship with him." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Hannah's breath caught, and she gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. She wasn't surprised, somewhere deep down. She'd sensed the rot beneath Monica's perfect smile, but hearing it laid out in numbers and ink made it painfully real. Victor continued, his voice measured. "I'm meeting with David tomorrow morning to show him everything. But before I do, I thought you should know. He's going to need your strength. This is going to destroy him for a while." Hannah sat back, the weight of the words settling over her like heavy rain. "You're a good man for telling me," she said softly. "Most people would stay out of it." He gave a faint, tired smile. "I've seen people lose everything because no one spoke up. I don't plan to make that mistake again." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock and the rustle of paper as Victor gathered the documents back into his folder. As he stood to leave, Hannah followed him to the door. "Mr. Estrada," she said quietly, "does my son know yet?" "Not yet," he replied, "but by tomorrow he will. And when he does, everything will change." When the door closed, Hannah remained standing in the hallway, staring at the folder's imprint still faintly visible on the tablecloth. For months, she had felt powerless, mocked, dismissed, erased. But now, for the first time, she could feel the tide shifting. The truth was no longer hidden behind polished lies or soft smiles. It was real, tangible, sitting in a folder thick with proof. She walked to the window, the afternoon light spilling across her face. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. Steady and solemn. Justice, she realized, wasn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it arrived quietly, carried in the hands of a man with a file full of truth. The next morning, the sound of rapid knocking jolted Hannah from her chair. She had barely slept. Her mind had replayed Victor's words through the night like a haunting refrain. When she opened the door, David stood there, his face pale and drawn, eyes hollow. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days. In his trembling hands was the same brown folder Victor had brought her the day before. Without a word, he stepped inside. The air between them was heavy, like the quiet before a storm. He placed the folder on the table and sank into the nearest chair. "You were right, Mom," he said finally, his voice breaking. "About everything." Hannah sat across from him, her heart aching at the sight of him. Her once confident son, now looking lost, small, almost childlike. She wanted to reach for him, but something in his posture stopped her. He needed to speak. He opened the folder, revealing the papers she already knew by heart, bank statements, invoices, proof of betrayal written in black ink. But this time there was something new on top, a handwritten note, folded neatly. "She left it on the counter," he said, staring at it like it might burn him. He unfolded the paper and began to read aloud, his voice trembling. "David, I'm leaving with someone who values me. Don't try to find me. You'll only make things worse for yourself. Take this as a lesson. You can't build a marriage on guilt and control. You were too busy trying to make everyone happy, and you forgot how to make me feel alive. Goodbye." At the bottom, Monica had signed her name in looping. Confident strokes, as if even in her departure, she needed to prove her dominance. David's hand shook as he lowered the letter. "She took everything, Mom. The jewelry, the savings, the cash from the safe, even the car." He gave a hollow laugh. "She drained the company card before she left, and I didn't even see it coming." Hannah's throat tightened. She rose and moved to his side, placing a hand on his shoulder. "David," he looked up at her, eyes glistening. "I let her hurt you. I believed her over you. I thought she loved me." "She didn't love anyone, David," Hannah said softly. "Not you, not me. Not even herself. People like her only love what they can take." His composure crumbled then. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have listened." She sat beside him and wrapped her arms around him, the way she used to when he was little and came home bruised from playground fights. "Sure," she whispered, "it's over now." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't really over. The damage Monica had left behind wasn't just financial. It was the kind that burrowed into trust and made it fragile forever. After a long while, David pulled away, his voice raw. "What am I supposed to do now?" "You start again," Hannah said. "You face it. You rebuild. That's what we do in this family." He nodded weakly, running a hand through his hair. "I can't believe I let her make me think you were losing your mind." Hannah's eyes softened. "You wanted to believe her because it was easier than believing she could lie to you. That's what love does. It makes us blind until the pain opens our eyes." He looked at her then, his face streaked with tears. "You forgive me?" She hesitated, her voice trembling as she finally answered. "Money can be replaced, David. Trust cannot. But you're my son, and I'd rather rebuild from broken truth than live inside a perfect lie." He reached for her hand, holding it tightly as the morning sun spilled through the window. The gardenias outside swayed in the breeze, their petals trembling like the fragile peace slowly returning between them. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel haunted. It felt quiet, grieving but honest. And for Hannah, that was enough. In the weeks that followed, David did what Hannah had once thought impossible. He took full responsibility. The first call he made was to Dr. Patricia Torres. His voice was calm but unyielding as he demanded that she retract her false medical report about his mother's cognitive decline. When she hesitated, citing professional discretion, he reminded her that falsifying medical documentation was grounds for license suspension. Within 48 hours, the report disappeared from the clinic's records, and Dr. Torres sent a written apology to Hannah, thinly veiled as an administrative correction. Then came the legal storm. David filed for divorce and, with Victor Estrada's help, began the process of recovering the stolen company funds. Every document, every transaction, every false invoice Monica had fabricated was turned into evidence. She had vanished to another state, but her trail, digital, financial, undeniable, was too clear to erase. Within months, the court ordered restitution. Her name was scrubbed from company records, her accounts frozen. Justice, Hannah thought, didn't roar. It moved quietly, like roots reclaiming soil after the weeds were gone. David visited every weekend now, sometimes after long work days, sometimes on quiet Sunday mornings when he'd show up unannounced with pastries from her favorite bakery. But there was no more grand talk of money or help. Instead, there was presence, steady, unpretentious, and sincere. He fixed her leaky faucet, cleaned the gutters, replaced the dying bulbs in the porch light. Every act, small as it was, spoke louder than any apology. One afternoon, as they sat in the backyard, the sunlight soft through the grapevine trellis, He finally said what had been building for months. "Mom," he began, "the house is too much for you to handle alone. I've been thinking, why don't you move in with me?" Hannah looked up from her knitting, her face serene. "Oh, David," she said, smiling gently. "I know what you mean well, but no." He blinked, caught off guard. "No. I don't need protection, son," she said, her tone calm but firm. "I need respect. And respect means letting me live my own life." He nodded slowly, a faint smile touching his lips. "You're right. You always are." "I'm not always right," she said softly, "but I've lived long enough to know that love doesn't mean control. It means presence without ownership." After that day, their rhythm settled into something simple and beautiful. Every Sunday became sacred. David would come over with groceries. They'd cook together, and sometimes when the evening air grew cool, they'd sit on the porch in silence, watching the sun dip below the Fresno rooftops. There were no more unspoken tensions, no need to pretend. They had rebuilt something sturdier than before, not the illusion of perfection, but the quiet truth of mutual dignity. Neighbors noticed the change. The whispers faded. Sister Margaret, who had once brought boxes of food, now stopped by just for coffee and laughter. Hannah no longer carried the air of someone trying to defend her name. She didn't need to. One Sunday, as David was leaving, he paused by the doorway and turned back. "You know," he said, "for a long time I thought success was about how much you could give someone. Now I think it's about how much you can understand them." Hannah smiled, touching his cheek the way she had when he was a boy. Understanding is a kind of wealth that never runs out. When he drove away, the street fell quiet except for the soft rustle of the gardenias. Hannah sat down on the porch, the same porch where so many painful memories had begun, and let the evening light wash over her. They had both been broken, but neither was defined by the breaking. And as the sun slipped below the horizon, she whispered a simple truth to the fading day. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's remembering without bitterness. A year later, the world around Hannah had softened again. The gardenias she once neglected bloomed proudly in neat rows. Her house, freshly painted pale yellow, looked alive in the morning light. The pain that had once lived in every corner had faded into memory. Still there, but dulled, like an old scar she could touch without flinching. David had rebuilt his life too. The company was steady, the debts repaid, the gossip quieted. His laughter had returned, lighter this time, stripped of arrogance. And for a while, it seemed like peace had finally taken root. Then, one spring afternoon, Hannah noticed the changes. The Sunday calls became shorter. The visits that had once been routine were delayed, first by a day, then a week, then two. When he did show up, he looked distracted, eyes half on his phone. She didn't need to ask why. Mothers always know. Her suspicion was confirmed when she found a small thank you card in the grocery bag he'd left behind. It was signed Elena. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. The message read, "Thank you for sharing your son with me." The words lingered in her mind long after she threw the card away. Weeks passed. David stopped coming altogether. Once again, the house fell into silence. Hannah didn't cry this time. She'd learned long ago that tears didn't fix distance. Instead, she waited. She cooked dinner for one. She watered her flowers. She watched the sky change colors over Fresno's rooftops and wondered if love always required relearning the same lesson. One evening after dinner, she picked up the phone and dialed his number. He answered on the second ring, his voice hurried. "Hey, Mom, can I call you back later? Don't let anyone stand between us again," she said softly, cutting him off. Her tone wasn't scolding, but it carried the weight of history. On the other end of the line, David said nothing. "I know you're happy," she continued, "and I want that for you. But happiness built on forgetting where you come from doesn't last. You know that better than anyone." He exhaled slowly. "She's not like Monica," he said defensively. I'm not saying she is, Hannah replied. But even good people can make you lose sight of yourself if you let them. Don't repeat old mistakes. Not with me. Not with yourself. The silence that followed wasn't angry, it was reflective. For the first time, he sounded like the boy she raised, not the man the world tried to shape. You're right, he said finally. I just didn't notice how far I was drifting again. 2 weeks later, he appeared at her door. No announcement, no text. Just him, standing there under the porch light, holding a small paper bag of pastries. His expression was calm, resolute. I ended it, he said. Hannah studied his face, searching for bitterness, but finding only relief. Was it difficult? He shrugged faintly. Not as difficult as losing myself again. He looked past her, at the warm glow of the living room behind her. I told her something before I left, he added quietly. What was that? He met her gaze. That loyalty to family isn't weakness, it's strength. Hannah smiled, slow and proud, and opened the door wider. Come in, son. Dinner's still warm. They ate together that night, laughing about old memories, the burnt tamales, the stray dog David had once brought home. The day he'd tried to fix the roof and nearly fell into the rose bush. The air felt lighter than it had in years. Later, when he left, Hannah walked out onto the porch. The sky above Fresno burned gold and pink, the city's rooftops glowing in the last stretch of daylight. She breathed in the scent of gardenias, sweet and earthy. So much had been taken from her, money, peace, even her reputation for a while, but not her dignity. That had survived everything. She thought of Monica, of the lies, the humiliation, the long nights of doubt. Once, she had believed revenge meant seeing the guilty punished. Now, she understood it was something quieter, deeper, something Monica could never have grasped. She stole my money, my peace, my name, Hannah murmured, her voice soft against the fading wind, but not my dignity. Because true revenge isn't about revenge at all, it's living well, and being respected. The sun dipped below the horizon, and for a moment the world was still. Inside the house, the clock ticked steadily, marking the rhythm of a life reclaimed. And as Hannah sat there on her porch, wrapped in twilight, she felt the kind of peace that no thief, no rumor, no betrayal could ever take away again. It wasn't victory through anger or spite. It was victory through grace, quiet, complete, and hers alone.